The death toll rises to 227 victims after a powerful earthquake in Haiti. The Venezuela's ruling party and the opposition hold a new round of dialogues in Mexico. And in Afghanistan, a new Taliban offensive has headed to capital Kabul. Hello and welcome to telesur. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. A major 7.3 magnitude earthquake has struck Haiti. The quake hit the west of the country, which is epicenter about 8 kilometers from the town of Petit through the Nips, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Heavy ground shaking can be expected in the Western Peninsula, and serious damage to structurally weak buildings and other infrastructure is likely to occur. The tremor was felt all over Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. Images on social media have shown local residents organizing rescue efforts after the earthquake. Residents of Port-au-Prince fled their homes after a second 5.2 magnitude earthquake was registered in the same region a couple hours later. In 2010, a similar earthquake killed more than 200,000 people and caused extensive damage to infrastructure and the economy of Haiti. Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry has declared a state of emergency after the powerful earthquake that struck the Caribbean nation.
The government decided this morning to declare a state of emergency for 1 month following this disaster. We call on the population to show solidarity with each other. Let's avoid panic in the face of this earthquake. All the government and the structures of civil protection are mobilized, and we ask the population to redouble their efforts and precautions, especially if there are aftershocks.
Meanwhile, the heads of the country's Civil Protection Agency has announced the death toll of 227 victims as the nation begins counting the cost of the disaster. And Latin American leaders have voiced their solidarity with Haiti. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza expressed solidarity with the people of Haiti, and Venezuela is willing to provide logistical support and necessary supplies. Also, Bolivian President Luis Arce tweeted our condolences for the victims and the hope of recovery of the injured. We are with you, Haitian brothers. Meanwhile, President Pedro Castillo emphasized that Peru's government will provide the necessary support to Haiti in order to advance in unity and fraternal integration. The government and opposition leaders of Venezuela have held a new round of negotiations in Mexico. After the arrival of the participating delegations to Mexico, the dialogue between the Bolivarian government of Venezuela and the opposition began this Friday with the aim of building an agreement for peaceful coexistence, reconciliation, and the strengthening of democratic values. According to the director for the Norwegian Center for Conflict Resolution, Dag Nylar, among the items on the agenda to be discussed during the dialogue are political rights, electoral guarantees, the lifting of coercive measures, the restoration of social peace, and the return of assets illegally blocked abroad. Meanwhile, Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo EBRARD said his country has always been committed to peaceful solutions and dialogue.
On the other hand, tell them that Mexico will, as always, be a respectful, supportive host, always willing to collaborate, to cooperate, so that the dialogue will be successful. I have no choice but to give you the best, and also to tell you that on behalf of the community of Latin American and Caribbean states that we have just met on July 24 here also in Mexico City on the anniversary of Simón Bolívar, to wish you the best and to tell you that the whole community of Latin America and the Caribbean and the whole world asks your eyes and best wishes.
The representative of the Venezuelan opposition, Gerardo Blades Pérez, thanked the international support and assured that a transcendent process begins for Venezuela.
They have been built in this initial pendular of exploratory phase by its own nature reserve the sufficient base for us to begin the most solid process for which we have transcribed. The support of the international community has been instrumental in making this happen, support which we appreciate and which we ask to continue from now until we reach an agreement.
On the other hand, the President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, thanked the governments of Mexico and Norway for their efforts at a new round of negotiations between representatives of the Bolivarian government and the opposition.
This signature means a lot. It means everything, because it means hope. We take care of that hope. We take care of our capacity, our boldness, our intelligence to get points of confluence beyond the profound difference that we have at the moment.
In Ecuador, a national teachers' protest was supported by other social organizations, such as indigenous groups, public workers, and their own students. Scarlett Tamayo, president of Ecuador's Secondary Students Federation, offered a brief statement on the protest outcome.
After important days of mobilization, rallies, speeches, pot and pan banging protests, and above all a 32-day hunger strike, we succeeded in getting the Constitutional Court to declare the reforms to the organic law of intercultural bilingual education in force. 32 days in which the educational community risked their lives for quality education. As students, we managed to keep in force Articles 8 and 9 that speak of active student participation, and Article 20, which mentions the budget for education, which is 6% of gross domestic product. This cannot be disrespected by the anti-popular governments in power, and we announce that we are still in constant struggle and mobilization so that all the articles of the reform of the education law are put into force. Long live the hunger strike, long live the teachers, and long live the unity of the popular sector.
More news in a minute, stay with us. Welcome back. Taliban forces have advanced to Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, which prompted to order to evacuate citizens and the diplomatic teams from the United States and the United Kingdom. On Friday, it was confirmed that 5 other cities in the country had been taken over by the Taliban, who claim to have control of half of all the provincial capitals of the country. The United Nations Agency for Refugees warned that the high impact on the population by the violent control of the Taliban has generated at least 250,000 displaced, of which 80% are women and children. Due to the advance of the Taliban in Afghanistan, the governments of Norway and Denmark announced the temporary closure of their embassies in Kabul. In addition to these countries, Netherlands and Switzerland also authorized the evacuation of their diplomatic teams. Hundreds of people have headed to Kabul's Hamid Karzai International Airport, seeking to leave Afghanistan after the Taliban offensive. Tickets for flights out of Afghanistan have been scarce ever since militants took control of several of the country's provincial capitals over the past week. In the past days, Afghanistan's second and third largest cities, Herat in the west and Kandahar in the south, have fallen to the Taliban, as has the capital of the southern province of Helmand. The offensive comes after U.S. President Joe Biden ordered the complete withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan by August 31st.
With the situation we have right now, there's no guarantee of where the future of Afghanistan is leading to. The fighting is getting worse day by day, and the opposition are advancing. I used to work with foreigners, and I was not safe. Every day I had the stress of what is going to happen with me.
Russia is another country affected by natural disasters this year. In addition to the gigantic wildfires affected the Siberia region, now the region of Crimea is being hit by floods. The governor of the southern Krasnodar region said 132 people have been evacuated in the Black Sea resort of Anapa amid rising floods. He also said that the region had the same rainfall in a day as they usually get in a year. Officials said 2 people have died as a result of the floods, and over 3,000 have asked authorities for help. Russian President Vladimir Putin said the scale of the natural disasters this year is unprecedented. He called on authorities to be ready to evacuate more people living in affected areas, especially the elderly, as well as provide economic support for them.
Of course, we see, we understand, and I will note this again, that the scale and nature of natural disasters in some areas is absolutely unprecedented. All this once again shows how important it is for us to deeply, systematically, for the future, deal with the climate and environmental agenda.
For the 3rd consecutive day, the Italian firefighters have battled hundreds of wildfires throughout the country's south that have killed 4 people. Firefighters say there were over 500 blazes reported overnight. Meanwhile, the heat wave is due to continue in Italy for several days and risks fueling fires that have already plagued much of the country's south in recent weeks, notably in Sicily and the region of Calabria. Regional authorities in Sicily have declared a state of emergency as a result of the fires, while 50 voluntary firefighting teams from around Italy have flown to help battle the blazes. Meanwhile, authorities of Spain issue a red alert. The temperatures reached between 35 and 40 degrees in recent days. A fire that affected more than 75 hectares on the coast of the province of Tarragona was brought under control thanks to the participation of the fire department.
It is very hot. We are drinking water all the time and applying cream, stopping at the bars to have a drink every so often, and enduring the heat to be able to see the views. But it is better at home than in the street. It is very hot.
We endure the heat wave with water, shade, sunscreen, and so we go, looking for the shade, trying to find the shade.
And the death toll in Algeria from forest fires rises to more than 70. Approximately 30 of the deaths are military personnel who were participating in the evacuation and extinguishing of the flames. More than 1,000 people have been injured in the fires, and over 600 families have lost their homes. The Algerian Prime Minister went to the city of Tizi Ouzou to address the situation after President Abdelmadjid Tebboune issued an order to contain the fire. In the United States, the DIXIE fire in Northern California continues to expand. It's now burning over 1,200 square kilometers amid high temperatures and dry conditions. It's the largest wildfire in California, having destroyed more than 500 homes and most of historic downtown Green Valley. The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection reported that the blaze has burned over 500,000 acres in Butte, La Cerne, Plumas, and Tenapa counties. Fire department spokespersons have warned that bad weather conditions with unpredictable winds have caused new fire outbreaks, making the evacuation process more difficult. And the Turkish government has declared an emergency into the 3 provinces most affected by the recent floods and landslides. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that the measure covers the northern provinces of Kastamonu, Sinop, and Bartın, where 27 people have been reported dead. Air Force helicopters were deployed to rescue victims stranded in buildings isolated by the mud flows that swept away cars and buildings. And we have more stories coming up after one last break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. In Mexico, indigenous communities have commemorated 500 years of resistance after the fall of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. With traditional decorations, dances, and pre-Hispanic rituals, native communities from all over the country honor their ancestors and remember the importance of preserving their cultural heritage, as it has been preserved in spite of modern times for more than 500 years. The Aztecs settled in Tenochtitlan in the center of the Valley of Mexico in 1519. On August 13, 1521, the Spanish conquistador, led by Hernán Cortés and accompanied by other indigenous people, defeated the Mexican civilization, putting an end to the Aztec Empire.
It gives me a feeling of nostalgia, as it made me reflect on what this day was like 500 years ago. And I think it is a very good reason to commemorate it.
It is like strengthening our culture. It is very important to be able to identify oneself, to know the identity of each people. And if we know where we come from, it becomes clearer where we are going.
On August 13, the world celebrated the 95th anniversary of the birth of Fidel Castro, this historical leader of the Cuban Revolution. A military ceremony began with the laying of flowers on behalf of the Cuban people in front of the place where the leader's ashes rest, at the Santa Ifigenia Cemetery in Santiago de Cuba. As part of the celebration, the inauguration of 4 exhibitions will take place at the José Martí Memorial in Havana. Throughout his life, Fidel Castro fought against the multiple aggressions of the U.S. imperialism. During the tribute to the leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, President Miguel DIAZ-CANEL ratified the vision of the commander regarding the development of vaccine for its population.
When the competent authorities confirmed that they had obtained the first vaccine in the continent against COVID-19, the Abdala, and 4 other vaccine candidates in the development process, we all thought about Fidel, with his human vision that made him promote production and research projects and the development of science in the appropriate moments for internationalism. Fidel saw that in the face of pandemics and other natural disasters, it was the poor countries that were most affected, and he transformed into facts and certainty the word solidarity, the most beautiful and essential banner of the revolution.
President DIAZ-CANEL also said that thanks to Fidel Castro's advanced thinking, it was possible to make progress with regard with the pandemic.
The blockade has not been lifted. On the contrary, it has been tightened. What would COVID-19 have meant for Cuba without Fidel's strength, maintained under the greatest external pressure? We are not only fighting the Delta strain, but that evil strain that is a blockade with 243 additional measures imposed by Trump, and that the Biden administration keeps contradicting what was established in his campaign, and its cynical demands of respect for the Cuban people, which he insists on suffocating with economic sanctions.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro recalled Fidel Castro as the first one to denounce the effects of climate change that today affects several countries in the world.
We must also remember that Commander Fidel Castro was a prophet on the complicated issue of climate change. He was the first to raise his voice and alert the world that there was no time left. Back in 1992, he said, "A species is in serious danger of extinction. That species is the human species." And since then, he was in charge of divulging the scientific reports that were disdained by governments and war institutions to make known the reports and the alerts of scientists of the world today. As Fidel said, it seems that it's already late. Without being alarmist, it seems late to stop the climatic changes of the damage that consumer capitalism has done to the world.
Scientists, intellectuals, and social leaders paid tribute to Fidel Castro in an international virtual meeting. The event, organized by the executive secretary of the Sao Paulo Forum and the Cuban Communist Party, is titled "Fidel, a Man of Science with a Vision of the Future." The meeting, led by the Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel, highlights the fundamental role played by the Commander-in-Chief in the development of Cuban science. At an opening of the meeting, the island's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bruno Rodriguez, said that the revolutionary leader inspired and executed an original program to face the cultural war based on technologies, which constitutes the birth of the so-called battle of ideas. In other news, protesters took to the streets of France for the 5th consecutive weekend to oppose the country's health pass, now required for everyday activities. In France, individuals currently need a health pass to access cinemas, cafes, or trains. The push by French President Emmanuel Macron for a health pass, which is a proof of either vaccination, a recent negative test, or recovery from COVID-19, has sparked angry protests across the country. So far, an estimated 46 million French people, or 66%, had at least one vaccination, and just under 39 million are fully vaccinated. The country is on track to reach its target of 50 million people vaccinated at least once by the end of the month.
I am against the health pass, not necessarily against this vaccine. Even if we can ask ourselves questions about the fact that it was put into circulation very quickly, we can ask ourselves questions. I find this health pass an infringement on freedom, a disproportionate measure. It's segregation. I am not against vaccines, like the tetanus one. We agree there's mortality. I got stung 10 times, no problem. I am even a bit of a hypochondriac. And now you have to stop messing around. COVID is a disease that affects fragile people. The issue is the places in intensive care. There are 8,000 of them. Who is it that has been cutting the places for 15 years now? We are asking ourselves this question. The yellow vests.
And the United States has authorized a third dose of COVID-19 vaccine as the country fights the spread of the Delta variant. The Food and Drug Administration has specified that this additional third dose will be for organ transplant recipients or those with weakening immune systems. U.S. health authorities have been discussing the possibility of requiring a third dose following a similar move by Israel. Earlier this month, Washington rejected a request from the World Health Organization to halt booster vaccines to help offset the inequality in dose distribution between rich and poor countries. And we come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.